special talk, leadership talk by none other than Mr. K.V. Chowdary. Uh, Before I go on, then I request everybody to go on mute. Keep your audio on mute, and if possible, keep your video also on mute so that you get a better bandwidth. But keeping the video mute is your discretion depending upon your bandwidth strength. But certainly, I request everybody to go on mute your audio, please. I have a great pleasure in introducing Mr. K.V. Chowdary. I have fortunate enough and I had a privilege of appearing before him as a Commissioner of Income Tax, TAT exemptions, then Director of International Taxation in Bangalore. He was holding various positions in Bangalore. Then he moved to Chennai. Then from there, he moved to CBDT, Member Investigation. And then he became a Central Board of Direct Taxes Chairman. When he was a CBDT Chairman, I had a privilege and occasion to interact with him on AP agreement because during his period as a CBDT Chairman, the guy in CBDT introduced the advanced pricing agreement mechanism. And I would like to comment that in his period, at least we concluded almost 20 to 30 APAs within a period of 1 year. And afterwards, water people are concluding what he has done it. He had a great record from Income Tax Department. Myself, P.V. Srinivasan, K.R. Girish, all of us have appeared before him in different manners. Of course, as a professional, we always had views which are different to each other. But at the end of the day, as a person, when we left his room, we had a very, very pleasant experience. We never had any what I would call any experience which are not pleasant. We had a cup of coffee, we agreed to disagree, and then we came out. Man with the highest level of integrity and ethics, I would say that. I have never received a call from him when he was a commissioner. Shaker, my revenue is shortfall. Please contribute, please pay the taxes. which many of us have had occasion to get a call from various commissioners, but never ever from him. That is a level of integrity and ethics that he had. Thanks to his integrity and ethics from CBDT chair, he became a Central Vigilance Commissioner chairman and one of the most important sensitive posts. And I still remember when he became a chairman of Central Vigilance Commissioner, within 1 week, there is some sort of press news coverage coming about why he became a Central Vigilance Commissioner, and a man with the highest level of integrity and ethics only can handle it. He handled it absolute aplomb with the result. People who wrote about this have to withdraw at later point of time. That is a level of his commitment to the organization, to the government, what he did. And after coming out of his bureau, after he retired from Government of India, he is also part of the various organizations as an independent board and audit committee chair. In addition to the board and audit committee chair, because of my interaction with him, I like to say a few things. Some of the social work what he is doing in interior parts of Andhra, which he shared with me, is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. In fact, in interior parts of Telangana, where the ladies in the tribal areas, where the ladies do not have a proper maternity care for the delivery of child, Mr. Chowdary, along with the disabled trust, as creating a huge facility, including donating scanners, MRI scanners, CT scanners, and various scanners for the benefit of those tribal women. Sir, BCIC is also doing a couple of, not like your scale of tribal CSR initiative, but certainly we are doing a limited CSR initiative. We being a chamber of commerce, we always have got certain limitations, but we are also engaged in a CSR initiative very significantly manner. Our Vice President, Mr. Indu Shekhar, is leading that initiative. Last year, we did a significant COVID support, including donating oxygen accelerators to various hospitals, donating for what I would call frozen freezers for the burial grounds. So quite a lot of activities we did last year. This year also, we have adopted various wards for door-to-door vaccination drive. We are also working on with BBMP on lake regeneration. So BCSC as an organization also committed on CSR. And since tax is a core subject for me, and of course you had implied thing on tax, BCSC as an organization has released reports on direct tax administration reforms, which we give it to the government. Thanks to various professionals in BCSC, we have done a phenomenal job. Last year, we released a lot of reports, sir. One, Atmanirbhar Bharat and impact analysis. second airport to Karnataka, BCIC gateway to Karnataka, Namma Karnataka, which is gateway to India. This year we released 2 reports on economic analysis and direct taxes. We are working on 3 more reports: human capital development in Karnataka, coexistence of industry, healthcare, NGOs, that's 1 report, and 1 more report on MSME. So BCAC as an organization, we have extensive research reports coming up, and we have almost around 23 expert committees on various subjects. A lot of my chair and the co-chair are there, and then we got a lot of some of the eminent bureaucrats. We have met Mr. Jayaraj, Mr. Vidyashankar, Gopal Osur. We have Mrs. Gauri Kumar Sharma, who was the former secretary for Gujarat government and was also cabinet secretary in government of India. She's also part of BCSC. So we have a lot of former bureaucrats, eminent bureaucrats like you, and we have good captains of the industry. Thank you so much, sir, for agreeing to come and participate in our talk today. We are deeply privileged to have you here. Thank you so much, sir. And now I'm giving it over to you, sir. You can lead the discussion for in the best manner which suits you. Thank you, sir, once again.
Good evening, Sri Shekhar and friends joining on this virtual meet. Hope all of you are safe and healthy from the point of view of COVID as well as other health-related issues. I thank Sri Shekhar and Bangalore Commerce and Industry Chamber for giving me this opportunity to interact. Sir, I am not going to speak much about any, something very, very profound. But I thought I will just initiate a short discussion because corruption and bribery and integrity or the lack of it, as the case may be, is something which has attracted the attention of the intelligentsia. Though it attracts the attention of the intelligentsia, it affects the people who are at the bottommost level of the pyramid more than those who are vocal, etc. So I thought I will just share a few thoughts and also a couple of initiatives which I had started just for the sake of information and some kind of a, churning a debate. Sir, many times we find that, we use the words bribery, corruption, and lack of integrity synonymously. Before I take the discussion forward, I would like to kind of put them in some kind of a definition mode so that we are all on the same page. Bribery is the act of giving bribe, and bribe itself, in my view, means to dishonestly persuade someone to act in one's favor by a gift of money or other inducement. We can call it as a quid pro quo in common parlance. And I would like to define corruption as the abuse of entrusted power for a private gain or for a private purpose. The purpose could be material or an intangible one. While most of us readily recognize the act of bribery of somebody paying, say, 10 rupees to do or not to do a particular act, sometimes we don't realize the corruptibility in other ways. Say, for example, you are a member of, or I am a member of an interview board, and I come from South, or I come from Andhra, or somebody comes from some other state. Somebody has a faith in a particular religion, or somebody sports a tilak like me. Somebody is fond of fair-colored people. Somebody doesn't like slightly dark-colored people, etc. If you are going to let these prejudices, which whether you call them prejudices or likes and dislikes at your personal level, to interfere with your decision or a process of decision making, which should, for the purpose for which you are sitting there, the criteria certainly are not these, some of those things which I just mentioned, then you have indulged yourself in a corrupt practice. Why I am saying that is, this happens very unmindfully and many a time without our knowledge, unless you have made a conscious attempt to analyze this. You know, I had a very peculiar case as a Central Vigilance Commissioner, two peculiar cases. One was the case of a departmental examination happening in a small place in Bihar somewhere. And that was for regularizing some of these daily wage employees into permanent employees. So one of the invigilators, somehow he took pity or liking to one of the examinees, and he found that he or she was not in a position to, answer any of the questions. And this gentleman, uh, for whatever good reason, contrary to what is expected of him, he started prompting her on those answers A, B, C, D to be marked. And this was caught by an inspection team, consequent on one of the other examinees complaining about it. Now, he tried and proved that he didn't know her earlier, nor there was any quid pro quo, etc., etc. But nevertheless, the fact remained that he traversed beyond his call of duty to whatever it is, to satisfy his ego or to satisfy his call of sympathy for that lady, which he explained that she is a widow and this and that and so many things. So anyway, without getting into what happened ultimately, it's a matter which you come across. Similar instances of so-called within quotes harmless shifarish, when somebody comes for a work to be done or not to be done, is also in this category. Now, the third item which I stress upon much is integrity as a concept. While bribery is the most commonly discussed malaise and one of the major components of corruption, lack of integrity includes many more such malaises, such as corruption, bribery, etc., etc. One dictionary explains the integrity as following your moral or ethical convictions for doing the right thing in all circumstances, even if no one is watching you. And having integrity means you are true to yourself and would do nothing that demeans or dishonors you. There are many more such definitions, but for the purpose of this discussion, I would adopt a slightly modified meaning instead of getting into abstract and variable terms like morals, ethics, which keep changing from society to society, time to time, and at times depending on the occasion and event also. I would like to define integrity as following the prescribed procedure and doing the right thing. And by right thing here, I am not attaching any value judgment, but the laid down thing, what is required to be done of you in all circumstances. In other words, the crux of integrity is about doing the right thing and in the right manner. That is also important. The right, not only the right thing and in the right manner, even when it is not acknowledged by others or it is not convenient to you. In this sense, integrity is probably very close to the concept of compliance, which is generally spoken about in legal terms. Integrity is consistency of actions, values, methods, measures, principles, etc. The key words are consistency, honesty, truthfulness, and accuracy of one's actions. So with this, I would like to, touch upon the next aspects. You know, there are a lot of people who say, I am professionally honest, or I am this, I am that. But in my view, the integrity is something which is more of developing a personality. I cannot be lacking in integrity in my personal behavior and claim that I have always been maintaining a very high degree of integrity in my professional work, as these two spill into each other. Uh, the other thing about the people who maintain a high degree of integrity is that they keep their promises, and they make their promises very carefully and even reluctantly. But once a promise is made, it is invariably delivered. The next thing which I would like to touch upon for the purpose of this discussion is, now, why do people get corrupt in the sense of what we have discussed? The corruption is, one is of course the greed for making personal gains, whether it is in monetary terms or, as we discussed, to satisfy one's own expressed ego or latent ego or a desire or some popularity, etc., etc. The other is one of the main reasons which we can handle in this aspect of corruption is that the corruption and corrupt practices, more often than not, take root from the fact that there is a huge gap, or there is a substantial gap between the goods and services people want to have and the availability of such services. So this may look a little odd at the first instance, but I'll give you one trivial example. In our younger days, most of us used to live in, when we studied, we used to live in hostel away from home, and so we used to go and book a railway ticket to go home for the vacation. So we used to have bundles and bundles of books where the ticket issuing person will go through that book and see whether there is a vacancy in that compartment for that day and for that class, and then he would write your name and then issue the ticket. So he would say, the moment many of them would say there is no ticket available on that day, then you are prompted to say that you can afford a little more money off the record. Then he would somehow find some empty place somewhere and write your name there. I'm not accusing the railways or the railway clerk alone because he is at a lower rung of the department, but I'm just giving, this is something which we used to come across. There are many such institutions and you can give any number of examples where, based on the need, you need something, and then the other person is in a position to give or satisfy that need, so he demands something more than what is legally due. So then the government came and introduced technology, and then they made it in such a way that, if there is a vacancy, you can see it on the computer and anybody can book the ticket, etc. So we reduce the scope and then reduce the scope for corruption in this line. Then government also did one more thing, or the railways. They said, okay, if you want to travel urgently and you are willing to pay something more, don't pay somebody under the table. Instead, you go for the Tatkal scheme. So you pay the government 100 rupees more or a 200 rupees more or a 25% more than the ticket, and then you can get a Tatkal ticket and then you can travel it. So you made the service a little costlier, or for those who can afford it, so that he doesn't have to do something which is not permitted. So we thought technology is going to solve the problem and then there is not going to be any corruption. Then came the issue that this technology had a limited number of people who can use it at a time. Say if 100 people log into the system at the same time, then there are issues that the system is not able to manage 100. Okay, you had increased 100 to 1000. There are 1000, more than 1000 who logged in at the system. So there is a difficulty. So people developed mechanisms so that their request will be forced into the system much faster than somebody else who doesn't have that kind of a system. This became a big scam. Now the question is whether is this corruption or is this only use of technology by a consumer. He is able to use a better technology that he is able to put his request at a second or a minute faster than what the other person is able to do. So, if you recall, the law enforcement agencies registered some cases against people who used certain technologies to push their requests for booking of tickets faster than the others, and try to call it, it's abuse of the system. Well, whether that amounts to abuse of the system or not, that's a separate issue. The point I'm only mentioning is that the moment services or goods, they become difficult to get, or there is a way to get them in a faster pace or a higher share, then the scope for corruption arises. Just another example of this is some of you or some of us who follow the capital market, we must have read that NSE co-location issue. NSE has set up terminals so that people can trade on shares. And in spite of the VSAT, ISAT, and WideNet and this and that, the persons who are located in the same building as NSE's servers, they were having an advantage of a fraction of a second or a second in executing their trades. And they could take advantage of that as investigations later came out. Now, here again, if such a thing was legally permissible, that somebody says that, yes, I will have my system in the same building, I will pay something more, it is legalized, it's fine. Otherwise, do we leave it to a person who has a higher technology or a higher ability to pierce through the system, or do we make it a level playing ground? That is the issue. So, as I said, the gap between the services and availability of services and goods and the demand generates, normally in economics, it should generate a higher price. But here, the higher price is translated into a price you pay, which is legally not a permissible price, or you call it a corruption or a bribe or whatever it is. So, and what are these effects of this corruption? This corruption distorts fair competition and deters domestic and foreign investments and stifles growth and opportunities. Corruption increases the cost of doing business, reduces the efficiency, and increases inequality. Corruption excludes poor people from the public services and perpetuates poverty. Corruption has disproportionate impact on the poor and most vulnerable people, increasing their cost and reducing their access to services such as health, education, justice, etc. So, how do we deal with this? One of the ways we can deal is you can go on conducting CBI searches, ACB searches, this and that, but you will find you will be handling one in 1,000 or a 10,000, and that also, given our system, it takes such a long time, and assuming that everything has been procedurally done correctly, probably after some several years, 20, 30 years, somebody may be either adjudicated as convicted, or he may be discharged. And such kind of a act is not going to deter people from this. So the other two things which we need to do is one is the prevention. Prevention is better than cure, all of us know. So how do we prevent these activities? The second is bring an awareness in people, awareness in the administrators as to what are these areas which could give rise to these corrupt practices and how do we mitigate them. So the first aspect of prevention, we just discussed. For example, I gave that example of very crude example of the railway, where in a manual system there were more number of opportunities for making a quick buck, whereas in a computerized system those have been reduced. So technology, if it is used and enabled in the right way, we can probably reduce corruption or the corrupt practices. I would put it more that way, to a substantial extent. But the other issue is technology is the only solution? Now, for example, I will give one interesting case. Now, we have all bought petrol or diesel from our petrol pumps. I don't know how many of you have experienced. Off and on, you get reports that the weights and measurements department has checked, and then they found that either 1 liter, which should mean 1000 ml. Actually, that pump is delivering only about 930, 20, whatever is the number. So here there is a technology nowadays. The water pump, the petrol pumps are all calibrated. You use an electronic system, so on and so forth. But still, if somebody could fudge the logic within the system, so that 1 liter means 900. If I define in the logic which I build into the chip, a liter is equal to 990 or 930, it will dispense only 930, but it will show a dispersal of 1 liter. The same thing in a much larger way happened with the coal companies. What happened was the coal companies, they dispatched so much of coal and stop the rake, weigh it, and then let it move. This was becoming a very time consuming thing. So the technology enabled building of a machine or a logic or a chip which would weigh a moving wagon and give its weight of what is the weight of that wagon with coal. And since we have the tare weight of the wagon recorded in the system, the coal that is loaded can be easily found out. Now, this was found to be a very good system. This was running. After a few days, somebody blew a whistle saying that, sir, the system has been fudged. And here a ton is meaning actually 1,300 or 1,400 kgs and not 1,000 kgs. So when a check was made, it was found that the logic therein was fudged in such a way that the ton would always mean much more than 1,000 kgs, which is the defined thing. So the railways were losing a huge amount of money by way of higher volume and weight of coal being billed at a lower amount. So while technology does solve to some extent the problems, if the technology itself lacks integrity or the process itself lacks integrity, then that is not going to solve the problem, but it creates an additional problem which is not that easy to find to a naked eye. While in the earlier traditional system, one could identify it with the naked eye, in the technology driven processes, you can't even identify it unless you are aware of these nuances. So the awareness being brought in people is something which is very important. The preventive activities. The second thing is each organization, whether it's a government organization, a company, small or big working environment, should develop a system of whistleblower mechanism. The whistleblower mechanism, most of you know that it will work provided you are willing to and you are able to demonstrate that the identity and the source of the whistleblower is protected. If I am going to give a complaint about, let's say, a criminal or a very very influential person in the society or in the organization, and I am afraid that there will be backlashes on me, very unlikely that 90 plus percent of the people will venture, because after all, most of us have our own limited resources and families to maintain, children to take care, whatever, etc., etc. Very few would say, I don't mind sacrificing my life for this kind of a thing. There may be one or two. But if there is a protection available, they would like to at least speak out or speak out in a confidential way. Unfortunately, this protection of whistleblowers enactment hasn't yet come through in our country, though a draft has been introduced a long ago. So, a development of an online and a real-time whistleblower mechanism with a completely foolproof system of protecting the identity of the whistleblower may bring some effect, because one, this will help us in preventing the fraud or the crime or the corrupt activity itself, and if it is already committed, then at least to trace the person. So the whistleblower mechanism is one important thing which helps us to prevent the corruption. The other thing is the recent amendment of the PC Act, which brought in the bribe giver also at almost the same risk as the bribe taker. And in fact, the bribe giver's risk has been fixed at a higher pedestal, I would think, in Section 8 of the PC Act compared to Section 7, where the bribe taker is there. So that would also give, but then that is a double whammy for a person who is put in a very difficult situation, that he had to pay some money or he had to do something inappropriate, and on top of it, he gets even punished. But then this is one way to bring down the number of instances of the corrupt practices. The third one, as I said, the awareness programs, is that many times the particularly at the lower level or the uneducated level or the educated but not so very careful about their activities level, it is the lack of awareness which is causing this problem. Say, for example, you go to a ration shop or some such place where some services are rendered. He is normally not expected to collect any extra money, but he would say, give 10 rupees more or 20 rupees more. And most of us think that that is a processing charge or some such thing, and we end up paying that. So very few argue with them and find out whether it is legally payable, not payable, etc., etc. So the bringing of awareness or making people their rights, duties, responsibilities, or what is due to them in any given circumstance, that, and similarly the timelines built into that. Say, for example, you apply for a municipal permission to make a small change to your house or even construct a house. If there's a timeline that the municipality is required to decide on your application within 30 days, and if they don't do that, if we have a mechanism by which we can report the fact of it not being done, then probably things would move faster. So, but people should know that they have a right to complain and to whom to complain. Many a time people don't know whom to complain. Some people write to the chief minister, some people write to CVC, some people write to police station, etc. But writing to somebody who doesn't have the primary jurisdiction or primary responsibility of solving that problem is unlikely to bring any result or at least delay the process. So we need to bring awareness among people. That's why as part of the Central Vigilance Commission's public activities, we used to conduct these vigilance awareness weeks. And some of them were very effective. In fact, I had a very, very touching and shocking experience in one of those vigilance awareness week meetings. I was participating in a rural area, a village, and there our vigilance officers conducted this vigilance awareness week, and there was some debate or essay writing, and prizes were being distributed. So one girl aged about 12 or 13, she from the village, she came to collect a prize on an essay she has written about corruption. So while distributing the prize, I asked that girl, "What did you write about?" She said, "I didn't write any story or essay, sir. I just wrote a real life incident that happened with me." I said, "Please explain," because most of the people, there were about 300 gathering. They have not read your article. She said, a few days before, there was an election happening in our village for a panchayat post. And in the night around 10:30, some people came and knocked at the door. And they brought some money and a bottle of liquor. And they gave it to my father. And they were asking him to promise that he would vote for a particular person or a party. So the girl said, I somehow woke up and I saw this, and I had we had a lecture on this kind of a vigilance and awareness and corruption, etc. There was a debate in our school and discussion. So I went and caught hold of my father's hand. I told him to promise keeping his hand, typically in a village way, on her head, and saying that you promise whether you want this 200 rupees or 100 rupees plus that liquor or my future, and decide on accepting this money. This is what that girl said. And this may be a very rare and emotive experience, but the fact is that the girl got to know that taking this money, or it is one form of corruption, is not an appropriate thing, which many in the village, even the older ones, may not be aware. They may be thinking that it's a rightful thing to get at the time of the election. So the awareness programs are something which are very important. The other thing which I touched upon is the process. The process is equally important. Many of us have gone through this, what happened in the 2G, and ultimately so much of investigation, JPC, CBI, income tax, ED, this, that, everything. Unfortunately, no money trail could be tracked. I don't know whether the money trail was there at all and somebody made money, because what we did not prove, what we could not prove. We can only in some general casual talk speculate about it, but we can't say authentically about it. But what certainly has got proved is the process of the application process and the grant of licenses process was certainly tweaked, in as much as though initially the people who wanted licenses could make an application up to an X day, suddenly about a week before that, the people who were in power, they said that the application process will close today. As a result, some who would have been eligible and who could have applied much later, they couldn't even apply. As a result, the competition is diluted, and whoever was already there and whoever was pre-informed could apply and get those licenses. The same thing happens in the tendering processes or in interview processes, where if you can come to know of the criteria based on which a tender is going to be decided or an interview is going to be conducted a day or even for that matter a few minutes ahead, then you have an undue advantage to fudge the system and turn it to your favor. Either such information comes to you for a consideration or it comes to you for some other reason, that is not very material. So what is material is the process has to be very robust and it should be in such a way that it cannot be fudged. So this is what we were trying to do as part of the preventive vigilance mechanism, that whether it is a industry or a government process, etc., etc., you review your processes in such a way that is there one transparency, number two accountability, and is there a provision or a possibility of it being fudged? If that is not there, then the system is likely to work and the scope for corruption will come down. I'm not getting into the politics of it, but the schools in Delhi and the government hospitals in Delhi have tremendously improved in their services in the last 2 years. And the reason was very simple. The reason was that somebody started monitoring these institutions through technology. For example, they installed CCTVs to see whether the teachers are coming to school and they are teaching or not. Earlier, what used to happen was, because the number of regularly employed teachers was very less, they were hiring a large number of temporary teachers on a daily wage basis, daily some 500 rupees or 600 rupees, something like that. And they were actually not hiring them, but preparing only musters to show that they have hired. Because there was no way of verifying with the children, and in fact, nobody wanted to verify. So the moment this technology has come and people could see, then automatically somebody or the other had to stand there in front of the CCTV and say that, and that too not for 1 minute to give the roll call, but the whole day and do something there. So as a result, somebody or the other was teaching, whether he's a qualified, that is the next part to be assessed. Similarly, in the case of hospitals, what used to happen was majority of the doctors used to come and sign and go away, have their own private practice. At the end of the day, the pharmacist will prepare a chart showing the medicines that have been disbursed, which have in fact not been disbursed to the beneficiaries, but probably found their way to somewhere else. So by making an online system of the entering the patient's name and the medicines prescribed for them and seeing it, now they have been able to ensure that the patient, the doctor is sitting during the office hours there, and not all the medicines are written at the end of the day and taken away, but round the day against a particular patient, these disbursals are taken. There are many such examples which can be narrated. But the point I'm saying is the improving of the system, the review of the systems, and where there is no system, bring in a system is something which is most important if we have to improve the delivery standards or the eliminate the corruption. One last example I will give, because how bad our systems are, before I conclude. I had a very unfortunate experience of examining a kind of a complaint relating to UP area, where they were trying to recruit 14 these guards for these railway guest houses or the rest houses, whatever they call. So there was a advertisement and some few lakhs of people, including a few thousands of PhDs applied for that. And there was the government did away with the written test, and on some basis they called for an interview system. And then ultimately, I mean, they did away with interview system, on some basis they did a test, and some people have been appointed. And one of the qualifications for that was the graduation was the qualification. So after the appointment was over, there was a complaint to the commission saying that, all this has been fudged. And so and so person who has been appointed, he is not a graduate. He has given a forged certificate of graduation, the degree certificate. So a report was called, and immediately a report came saying that no, sir, we wrote a letter to the university, and the university said they confirmed this certificate. Somehow, again, the whistleblower had written a letter saying that, sir, they are fudging this report also. So we got a verification done, and then a detailed investigation, and we found that the degree certificate which is produced by this person was not actually issued by any university, but the university name itself is something like the phishing mails you get, a corrupted form of say if it is Nalanda University, instead of it is Nalanda, it is Nalandu University. They got something printed and sent. And when a letter was sent from the enforcement agency, somebody promptly replied from the other side saying that yes, we have issued this certificate. So anyway, in one case that was detected and proven, and whatever was to be done by that, it was done. So I said, look here, if it were so simple, this fellow is not the only Einstein or Newton that he could have done. Let us just check, at least in respect of these 14 fellows, the verification of the credentials. Now, when we verified, we found that out of 14, 12 certificates were from either universities which didn't exist, or universities were there but this fellow did not get the certificate from the other fellow, or worse, some similar looking fellow, similar named person has got the certificate and this fellow has manipulated the name and then given it here. So we okay, what happened to those 12 fellows is a different thing. So when we started looking up and when chart sheets were framed, the basic question arose, was there any protocol which required such a verification? There was no such protocol. All that protocol was there was that you had to submit a degree certificate, and if the degree certificate is given, that it requires to be verified with reference to a particular, to the giver of the certificate. And is it necessary that you write to them, you go to them, or you get a confirmation, and what level of verification? None of them were there. All that was required was that to get this job you should be a graduate. To show that you are a graduate, you give a certificate. But on the appointing agency, there was no standard operating procedure as to how and whether these should be verified. So, in the absence of it, people could get away with whatever they want. So, what I was only saying was that we lack in having any standard operating procedures for most of our activities, be it in government or be it in private sector. As a result, things happen by default. And when questioned, people can get away. Not only that, even in good intention, I do it in one way, Mr. Shekhar will do it in another better way. But we don't know what is the prescribed way. So the sum and substance is we need to prescribe these processes. That's why I keep giving a very ridiculous example. You see, just let's say a computer is left open. It's turned off, but it was left open, and a lizard falls on that key. And once the impact is there, the computer starts. because and it goes through the same process, whatever it is. I am not such convergent. The power goes through so and so circuits, then you get the screen, whether it is Windows 7 or Windows 10 or something, then it happens. Now suppose, let us say, somebody who is a very knowledgeable person in computers, he comes and starts the computer. It doesn't start any faster. It doesn't do anything else other than what it does, whether by mistake somebody dumbly presses that button, or even if Bill Gates comes and presses that button, it is not going to act faster. So the processes are something which we need to set in place if we are to go a way ahead. So this is what the other thing is, the awareness aspect I told you. If we are able to bring awareness in people, we will be in a position to avoid a lot of things. So, as a part of the awareness exercise, when I was in the commission, we brought in this something called integrity pledge. Any citizen voluntarily taking, you can go to the CVC's website and then type pledge.cvc.in. You get a small pledge, and it's nothing legal or sanctified. It is a person's telling to himself that, look here, I am not going to do these things and I am going to keep my integrity. And a lot of questions, as you know, this people keep asking, what is this? He so and so has written this, but he still did it. Issue is not to fix somebody. Issue is to reiterate in yourself that I am committing myself to this cause. And is it that if I don't sign the pledge, I am going to do it? No, I am not saying that. It is just to reiterate, like what Gandhiji said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. And if he keeps on saying to himself that I cannot do such a thing and I will do only such a thing, he will end up doing only such a things which he wants to do, and he will not do such a thing which he doesn't want to do. So this is one such exercise. So the awareness in people and the channel to report the potential things, potential mishaps, and not only potential, even after things happen, through whether you call it a whistleblower mechanism or some other mechanism, is what matters the most to bring down this aspect of corruption. I think I have already exceeded my time, and we can open the house if the president permits.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your fantastic address on awareness, integrity, pledge, and processes. Thanks a lot for your session, sir. Probably we have 6, 8, we have 7 minutes. So anybody has got any questions, please, to Mr. Chowdary? You can raise the hand.
Mr. Sanjay Kumar Pathak has sent a message. Process digitization would control corruption to a greater extent. I am not, I cannot quantify, but it is certainly a very good beginning. As I told about the petrol pump or the coal machines, the initial result was very useful. But then somebody found a way to fudge the digitization process. And if we didn't have a cross check on such fudging, then the same old system in a different way continues. But technology certainly will help us to mitigate or reduce the extent of process losses.
Mr. Chowdary, this is Vidya Shankar. Very good evening to you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for a very illuminating and very illustrative, rendition. I was just thinking, is private sector participation one of the ways in which we can reduce corruption? I have in mind a couple of examples. You take the passport example. You take the railway reservation example. You take the example of government services being rolled out through private agencies. Like in Bangalore, we have something called Bangalore One, which rolls out about 45 government services 24/7. Now, can we harness the private sector to reduce corruption?
Sir, you have rightly said the thing. The immediate impact will be that there is from zero level today, let us say we privatized, like you rightly said about the passport. There is an impact and improvement from, say, the delays of so many days and the demands of so much. Things have come down to some level. But the point is, as long as there is a human intervention, the whether that person who is going to collect money is the employee of the passport office, a government employee, or an outsourced fellow like me, he can still play that role. So as long as we are unable to completely, what should I say, automate it or make sure that the process cannot be tampered with. Yes, from 100 complaints, we can bring it to 90 or 80 or 70 compared to like what happened, you rightly said, in the passport. The ultimately, what we have to improve is the process. Whether the process owner is the government employee, in which case there is more scope. Yes, I do agree, in spite of retiring as a senior government servant, compared to a private person. But you take the case of private sector itself. Shekhar would bail me out that there is no study, government this many cases of corruption, private sector this many cases of corruption. But in private sector also, you take it, whether it is in purchases, whether it is in recruitment, whether it is where let us say there's some demand which is being made by a private sector person in demand, a premium on the product, not official premium but informal premium to the sales and marketing persons, etc. So as I said, wherever there is a gap between the demand and supply, people would like to encash. If it legally goes to the person who is legally authorized to receive that money, then it is an increase in price. Otherwise, we are terming it as a corruption or a corrupt practice.
Chowdary Garu, can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes,
sir.
Let's go, sir.
Jairaj here, Mr. Chowdary, and I listened to your presentation with rapt attention because your wisdom and experience came through every word of what you said. My question to you, sir, is that exercise of discretion in the public domain coupled with state power, no matter what we say about it, the abuse seems to be increasing with time in many respects. Would you like to comment about it? And would you also like to say, sir, in this context?
You are absolutely right, sir.
One supplement. Would you say, sir, in this context, that elimination of discretion is the way to tackle this corruption?
To a great extent, sir. I will give a small example. Again, I will go back to my parent department. When I joined the department in 79, I think, Shekhar, I am subject to correction, till 85, the officers had the power to waive interest leviable on returns which are delayedly filed, or taxes which are delayedly paid, or taxes which have been partly paid, not paid. So there was, let me be very, very honest, there used to be a huge amount of corruption. Huge. See, how do I verify? I will put a petition saying that, you see, I fell sick on that day, so I could not file my return in time. Please waive my this thing. So it could be correct, it is not correct. So the government came with a legislation doing away with that discretion and said that, look here, you are to file your return on 31st of, let's say, October. If you don't file that, okay, you won't be going to jail, but you will be paying interest at the rate of, say, 12% or 15%, mandatory. Nobody has discretion. Then initially they gave that discretion to chief commissioner, from ITO to chief commissioner. Within 2 years, they found that there was no such a great difference in the exercise of that discretion, rightly or inappropriately, whether it is at ITO's level or CC's level, and so they did away with it. So to a great extent, removal of discretion would bring down the corruption. But I would also put a small caveat. That would at times create some situations where there are, genuine cases which require this thing. I will give you one small example, sir. See, when you apply to a central government accommodation, you punch in that system. Now they have computerized it. You punch in the system your name, address, then your level and this and that and what you are entitled. And you are supposed to file the signed copy of your application also to make sure that you only filed it. They have not yet introduced that electronic verification online. So what happened is, in my own case, I filled it up on 31st of October when I joined in Delhi. But on 31st October, being a Sunday, I could not deliver in fact, I went to the Works and Housing Office personally to deliver the form, but I could not deliver because the counter was closed. So I gave it on 1st. So on 1st, they said, you have not filed your paper on 31st. So your application will not be reckoned for this purpose. Though it's not such a great thing that 1 month delay, heavens were not falling. But I'm just telling, but there was no discretion built into the system. Now, if you grant discretion, there is possibility of the discretion being misused. If you don't grant any discretion, then there could be genuine cases. But I would certainly argue in favor of no discretion, because any discretion is capable of being misused.
Thank you, Chowdary Garu, and thank the President for bringing Chowdary Garu to all of us. Grateful to you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
sir. PVS, last question from PVS. PVS has got a last word.
Sir, we all understand in all systems, there is something called a maker and a checker.
Yes.
Somebody would make it and somebody would check it. So do you think that any bribery or corruption, the topic we are discussing, can happen unless there is a concerted action by more than a few people? And unless there's a concerted action, it would not. So to target one particular official or one particular person and say that he or she is corrupt, would it not be correct to say the system is corrupt rather than saying that a person is corrupt?
There are two things, sir. This is what I mentioned. One is the individual or a individualized corruption or individualized compromising. Second is the system compromising. If you look at the most celebrated bank fraud, the Punjab National Bank, the maker-checker system was very much in place. But unfortunately, we don't realize that the sharing of the password and sharing of the user ID is worse than going to hell. In that particular case, the maker and checker, both of them abdicated their responsibility and they gave these passwords to a person who used to be working in the bank, who since retired and is now working for the borrower. Because he had such a large number of LCs or something, instead of themselves doing it, he was an experienced fellow who used to do as an employee of the Punjab National Bank. They permitted that fellow to use the system and they both shared their maker-checker both things. So ultimately, on paper, responsibility is with them. In reality, somebody else who was not authorized even to look into the system was making all these swift remittances. So the system is good only to the extent of its least weakness. Just like they tell about the chain, chain's strength is the strength of the least of the weakest link. So if that is not interfaced, then the sharing of password and user ID is the most common thing. I don't know abroad, in government service, in banks, in many other places, they just share it.
I agree, sir. That's a menace which is there, virtually giving away the authority to somebody else.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think very enjoyable session. I could hear you every word of it with a lot of rapt attention. I'm thankful for the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. So we
Thank you
come
very
to-
much. Sir. Thank you. It was a very good experience for me to interact with you. Probably in better situations after things improve and we are able to meet personally. I would like to attend a few of your sessions in Bangalore in person.
Sure, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir. Very kind.
Thank you so much, sir. So we'd like to come to the end of the session. I would like to thank Mr. Chowdary. On a lighter note, when we are talking about corruption and when you're talking about ethics and integrity, on a lighter vein, I go back to one of the great political satirists, Chor Ramaswamy's drama of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was the prime minister. So ministers will ask, I'm talking about 1971, not in 2000, 1975 rather. He was asked, how are you going to major solve the problem of corruption? He will say the best problem is to solve the corruption, is legalize the corruption. And that's the best way to solve the problem. And he will say, how will you, why are you legalizing the corruption? Is it incorrect? And I still remember the dialogue, what he said. The previous government made the law as an ass. My government will make the law as a pig. We have. Hey, that's on a lighter vein. Thanks a lot, sir, for a thought-provoking session on this important.
Not at all, sir. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to interact with you. We have just 2 minutes, sir. Just if we can be here for 2 more minutes. Rupa, can you go ahead and present our thanks and then go to the national anthem, Rupa?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. And we will send the memorial to our residents. Go to national anthem, Rupa.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Namaskar.
sir. Thank you.
Have a great day, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. You too, sir. Have a great evening.